is the MPC meeting, and what do you think about RBI will go for a rate cut or pause it on
Well,
December 5?
Well, we believe that there is scope for a rate cut and RBI could exercise it. So let me explain it a bit. I think we have seen that growth is continuing to surprise on the upside, and we got a print of 8.2% for the second quarter. And the inflation is surprising on the downside. And actually, the inflation that came out in the month of October at 0.25 was the lowest when the series started. So in short, the growth is trimming the scope, whereas the inflation print is kind of creating the scope. So you're torn between these two extremes. Now let's talk a bit about growth. Well, our forecast for the current fiscal year is that GDP growth will touch 7%, 8% in the first half, and slow down in the second half to 6.1%. The global environment remains volatile. We are yet to have a trade deal with US, and so that keeps the risks on the export front quite open. And also, I think the world is expected to slow down a bit, and that also creates less demand for our exports. So I think while there is not much concern on the growth front, but I think we would see some correction of growth from these levels going ahead. Now, if you focus on inflation, I think there is a broad-based decline in inflation. Food inflation is down. Agreed, it's a very volatile component and keeps going up and down. But I think the prospects are also reasonably good for food inflation to stay low. Fuel inflation is low. Global crude prices are coming down. So as a result, I think the fuel inflation print in October was 2%, and we do expect fuel inflation to remain benign. Now, coming to core, which is the essence, core inflation was at 4.4%, but if you take the gold out, then it again comes down to 2.6%. So all the drivers of inflation are quite benign at this juncture, and that provides the scope. And I think even when we look at core, as I said, 2.6% means that there is little evidence in data of any excess demand pressure on inflation. So I think all these are comforting factors as far as the inflation is concerned. And we do expect the exchange rate has weakened, and that does apply pressure on imported inputs. But the global prices of goods are on a decline. I mean, they are very soft. The supply chain capacity is excess, and on top of that, we also have the Chinese excess capacity. So I think so. The comfort on the inflation front is very much there. Now, I would believe that given the volatile and uncertain global environment, a rate cut could be something like an insurance rate cut, and the central bank could go for it. We expect a rate cut, but fingers crossed on what the RBI will do. We'll have to wait till December 5.
And sir, CS said that within average of 8% growth in first half of the year, he expects India to grow at 7% for the whole year. Do you agree with that?
No, we expect 7% growth for the full year, and that means a slight moderation in growth in the second half, driven by base effects and somewhat higher prices, I think. So the deflator impact on growth will be less, I think, in the second half.
And sir, what is your expectation for FY26 and FY27 growth?
So as I just said, I think we expect 7% growth in the fiscal year 25-26, which is the current fiscal year. For the next year, we expect the momentum to continue, but at a slightly slower pace, which is 6.7% is our forecast for the next fiscal year, which is 26-27.
And sir, India's growth in Q2 was 8.8% despite 50% US tariff. Do you think when we sign the BTA with the US, growth momentum will be higher?
Well, when we sign the treaty, I think there'll be more confidence. You will get more capital inflows into the system, and I think it will also reduce stress on sectors like gems and jewelry, textiles, etc. So I think the GDP growth story is largely India-driven. I think we also gave stimulus in terms of GST rate cuts. Before that, I think the income tax rates had been brought down. And together with that, I think we have support for the rural economy. So, and monsoons have been reasonably good. So all these factors did support India's growth. I think so. India is largely a domestically driven economy. So if the domestic economy does well, we generally do well. And if we get a trade deal, I think that will support growth even more.
And sir, you take on rupee against the US dollar. It is all-time low. Where does you see in coming days?
Well, I think if you see the history of the rupee since 2013-14, the taper tantrum period, I think we have seen periods when the rupee weakens it much faster, and there are periods when it strengthens also. So right now, the rupee is under pressure. For forecasting, the rupee trend is not the best friend, so you can't extrapolate it. My belief is that if you get a trade deal, I think the depreciated rupee will again start appreciating, and I think it also depends quite a lot on what the global financial conditions are. And our expectation is that rupee will strengthen from these levels in the months ahead.
एमपीसी की मीटिंग सर होने वाली है, क्या उम्मीद है आपको सर?
एमपीसी मीटिंग में हमारा ये मानना है कि जो ग्रोथ है वो आपको बता रही है कि अभी इंटरेस्ट रेट काटने की इतनी आवश्यकता नहीं है, पर इन्फ्लेशन का प्रिंट बता रहा है कि आपके पास बहुत स्कोप है. तो हमारा मानना यह है कि अभी क्योंकि जो ग्लोबल सिचुएशन है वो काफी वॉलेटाइल है, हमारी ट्रेड डील अभी हुई नहीं है अमेरिका के साथ, और इसलिए ग्रोथ के लिए हमेशा थोड़ा बहुत रिस्क एक्सपोर्ट साइड से बना रहता है. तो बट जहां तक इन्फ्लेशन का सवाल है, उसमें एक ब्रॉड बेस्ड डिक्लाइन देखा जा रहा है. फूड इन्फ्लेशन नीचे है, फ्यूल इन्फ्लेशन नीचे है, और कोर इन्फ्लेशन जो 4.4% थी वो भी अगर सोने को हटा लिया जाए तो वो भी करीब 2.6% है. तो एक ब्रॉड बेस्ड डिक्लाइन फूड इन्फ्लेशन और अदर सोर्सेज ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन में है, जिस वजह से एक स्कोप क्रिएट होता है कि आरबीआई रेट काट सके. हमारा ये मानना है कि आरबीआई इस अपॉर्चुनिटी को यूज कर सकता है एज एन इंश्योरेंस रेट कट, पर ये जो डिसीजन होगा ये बहुत ही क्लोज होगा, और फिंगर्स क्रॉस्ड फॉर दैट.
सर FY 26 और 27 के लिए अगर आप ग्रोथ अपने हिसाब से बता सके, क्या देख रहे हैं आप?
FY 26 जो कि करंट फिस्कल ईयर है, उसमें हमारा एक्सपेक्टेशन है ग्रोथ 7% रहेगा. इसका मतलब यह है कि 8% फर्स्ट हाफ में था, 6.1% सेकेंड हाफ में दिखाई देगा. थोड़ा धीमापन ग्रोथ में आएगा, पर ओवरऑल इकोनॉमी फिर भी पूरे फिस्कल ईयर में अच्छा परफॉर्म करेगी. अगले साल के लिए हमारा ये मानना है कि ग्रोथ 6.7% पे रहेगी, जो कि ऑन द एवरेज कम है, पर मोमेंटम के हिसाब से काफी स्ट्रांग है. और हमारा एक तरह से ट्रेंड रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ है पास्ट का, क्योंकि पैंडेमिक से पहले इकोनॉमी करीब 6.6% की रफ्तार से आगे बढ़ रही थी. ये हम मानते हैं कि आगे चलते हुए भी ये रफ्तार बनी रहेगी.
तो सर आखिरी सवाल रूपी को लेके है कि ऑल टाइम लो पे चल रहा है, किस तरह से आप देखते हैं इन कमिंग डेज?
देखिए, रूपी की वॉलेटिलिटी हमेशा रही है, और ये भी मतलब अनयूजुअल पीरियड है ग्लोबली. तो इसमें एक तरह से रिस्क ऑफ सिनेरियो है. तो इसमें रूपी की कमजोरी जो दिखाई दे रही है, इसको आप ये नहीं मान सकते कि रूपी आगे चलते हुए भी कमजोर रहेगा. ये सिचुएशन अगर ट्रेड डील होती है तो जल्दी बदलेगी, और हमारा मानना यह है कि रुपया इस करंट लेवल से फिर स्ट्रेंथन होगा, जैसा कि उसने हिस्टोरिकली बिहेव किया है. डेप्रिसिएशन होता है बहुत तेज, उसके बाद फिर एप्रिसिएशन भी होता है करेंसी का. ऑन द एवरेज रूपी 3% पर एनम के हिसाब से डेप्रिशिएट करता है. इस साल वो 5% ऑलरेडी कर चुका है.